place accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astonished. They said, "Where did this man get all this? What kind of wisdom has been given him? What mighty deeds are wrought by his hands? Is he not the carpenter, son of Mary, and the brother of James and Joses and Judas and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his native place, and among his own kin, and in his own house." So he was not able to perform any mighty deeds there, apart from curing a few sick people by laying his hands on them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Again, good morning to all of you. The question that the scriptures bring to mind this morning is, who can judge rightly? Who can look into the heart of the human person? Who can see and understand the causes, the reasons, the motives that shape our behavior, our choices? Who can see the goodness that is in each one of us? And who can see the evil that lurks at the door? Only the Lord. Only God can see, know, and love us, even in the midst of our sin and our sinful behavior, because He knows us. He loved us before the beginning of time, before we were in our mother's womb. He knew us and loves us. And so it is the height of presumption, of self-righteousness, and of hypocrisy when we engage in these kinds of criticism and judgment. That is what the Lord asks us to look at in the gospel today. A wise man wrote that when we judge others, we do not define them. We define ourselves, because we tend to project our own prejudices, biases, fears, resentments, and attitudes in how we look at another. They were impressed by Jesus' words, but not by Jesus. Because that old saying still stands: familiarity breeds contempt. They thought they knew Jesus, and they didn't have a clue. They thought they knew where he came from, the family that he grew up in. They thought they knew everything about him, just a simple worker, carpenter. Where does he come off? being a rabbi, a teacher. Where does all this wisdom or alleged wisdom comes from? Their criticism and judgment of Jesus had nothing to do with Jesus and who he really was, the Son of the living God, the Messiah long promised. And Ezekiel, in the first reading, says, whether they like what I say or not say, I know it is the Lord that is moving me to say it. To call this stiff-necked, rebellious people back to holiness, to fidelity to the gospel. And so whether they accept that message or not, I must proclaim it. That is the essence of what it means to be a missionary disciple, a witness to God. And to refrain from thinking we know who anybody is and what they're all about. We can always know and condemn the sin, but never the sinner. And so the Lord calls us to acknowledge that. And why? Paul makes it clear. I can not boast about the gifts of visions and insights that the Lord gave me. I cannot brag about my accomplishments in proclaiming the good news. The only thing I can boast about is the only thing that I am responsible for. My weakness, my sinfulness, and the Lord has taken care of reminding me of that. We don't know what the heck it was. That was the thorn on the side that allowed Paul to be fully aware of his sinfulness, unworthiness for the gifts received. Whether it was an illness, a sin, whatever. But it made him aware that everything that he did and accomplished was the gift of God. That on the road to Damascus, he was knocked down to the ground as he sought to persecute Jesus. Because he thought he knew what God was about, what the message was about. He thought he knew who Jesus was. A faker, a pretender. Someone who was leading people to sin. And so, with all his zeal, he persecuted. But Jesus met him on the road and made him see that he was blind. That all along he was blind because that only could see out of his own self-centered, self-righteous, judgmental attitudes. And he had to humble himself and go before an old man whom he would have sent to jail and death but a few hours earlier, to allow him to see and to understand. We are called to that sort of humility. To know that there are challenges and difficulties in our lives that are possibilities. To recognize and acknowledge our need for God and our need for humility. And to refrain from that criticism that springs so many times out of preconceived ideas and biases and fears. Because one of the reasons that his townfolk rejected him is because they thought he knew, they knew him. The other is his message was uncomfortable. It was challenging. It called for me to examine myself, my behavior, my attitudes, and to change them in accordance with that law of love. And so, when we point a finger, we better know there's 4 more pointing backwards at us. Anytime we're tempted, and it happens probably about 20 of the 24 hours of the day, to kind of criticize, even if I don't gossip, to mentally criticize and judge somebody, say, okay, Lord, forgive me. Let me not fixate on that person and reflect on where I am lacking, where I still need to grow. And help me, rather than to condemn and judge this person, let me reach out to them in love and friendship, whether that love and friendship is accepted or not. But let me always speak and live the truth of the gospel. Let me not be a hypocrite, Lord. Let my life be in conformity with my faith. And let me rely, like St. Paul, only on your grace. Because your grace is enough for me.